Hey everybody, welcome to Mr. Drury's Read Aloud YouTube channel where I read books and you listen. And if you like this video, make sure you hit like and subscribe right down here. I am totally messing with you because I make zero money on this stuff. I'm just doing it because I enjoy this book. And here we go, chapter 27. Let me see if I can set this up so that you can see me a little bit. And there we go, chapter 27. Lady Thornton hated Ruth, and Ruth hated all of us. Not that I blamed her. A few days after Maggie left, in the middle of another silent, awkward meal, Ruth took a swallow of water, then belched. I could tell it was an accident, not an impertinence, but Lady Thornton rolled her eyes and sighed as though belching Germans were far too much for her to bear. "Oh, stop it," I said. "Ruth can't help belching, but you can help the rude noises you make." Lady Thornton lowered her chin, looked down her nose at me, and glared. "I hardly think—" A sudden crash shook the table. I jumped. It came from Susan. Susan, who'd picked up her plate and slammed it down hard. "Ada's right," she said calmly. "Eleanor, you can help the noises you make. Also, I will not continue to be the referee in this house. Not the sole cook, nor the... Stop! Nor the tweenie. Nor do I wish to live in the middle of a battlefield. Bad enough there's a war outside our home. We don't need a war inside as well." "Stop, Louisa. Louisa, that's enough. That's enough. I love you. I love you. Yes, I know. I know. Stop. Don't lick my glasses." Lady Thornton's mouth formed a thin, grim line. "I'm doing the best I can." "I don't believe so," Susan said. "When Becky died, I thought I was doing the best I could too. Then the children arrived, and it turned out I could do better. It wasn't easy, but I could do it." She stood. "Let's take a walk," she said to Lady Thornton. "You and I. Children, when you're finished eating, I expect all three of you to do the evening work in a calm and cooperative manner." She grabbed Lady Thornton by the elbow and walked her out the door. Jamie, Ruth, and I stared. Jamie said, "Core." When we finished eating, Ruth cleared her place, then started to walk up the stairs. "No," I said, "you heard Susan. Come back here and help." Ruth sniffed. "I'm supposed to study, not do housework." I said, "I do both." Ruth said, "That's because you live here." Ruth lived here too, as far as I could tell. "Wash or dry?" I asked. "Jamie's going to bring in coal." Ruth looked at me. She folded her arms across her chest. I folded my arms across mine. Finally, Ruth looked away. "Dry," she said, and did. Susan and Lady Thornton returned while I was taking my bath. I came downstairs in my pajamas and dressing gown. "Ready for our story?" Susan asked. Jamie was curled up beside her. Lady Thornton sat as usual in her wing-backed chair, knitting a stocking. Her face was flat and calm. I wasn't sure what to think. Susan sounded normal now, but at dinner she had not been normal. I felt anxious. "Are you finished being angry?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "And you survived it. You're okay." Maybe. "Tomorrow," Lady Thornton said, "you and I are going to do the shopping, Ada, together." Next morning, Susan taught us, the way she always did. Lady Thornton came down late. "Good morning, Susan. Good morning, children. Ada, Jamie, Ruth." She said Ruth's name stiffly, but at least she didn't sneer. Ruth glanced up from her textbook. "Good morning," she said. "Ready, Ada?" Lady Thornton pulled on her gloves. In the village, the women in the queue outside the butcher's shop were all politeness towards Lady Thornton. If they were surprised to see her doing the shopping with me, they didn't let on. We stood for an hour. When we finally reached the front of the queue, the only choices left were beef shin bones or a ragged piece of liver. "Sorry," the butcher said, wiping his hands on his grimy apron. "All I've got." Lady Thornton peered into the glass case, then down at me. "Do you know how to cook liver?" she asked. I shook my head. "Susan would." I didn't like liver. I thought it tasted muddy. Ugh. Lady Thornton grimaced. "I told her you and I would make dinner tonight." I can do shin bones, I said. She raised her eyebrows. Really? She shuddered. I never thought of shin bones as something people actually ate. I said to the butcher, a shilling's worth of beef shins, please. You want them sliced like your mother gets them? Susan's not my mother. Right, said the butcher. You want them sliced like she gets them? Lady Thornton looked amused. I gave the butcher a dignified nod. Please. At home, Lady Thornton watched while I browned the shins and left over dripping. She chopped carrots, while I chopped celery and a slice of onion. Then I put the shins in a pan with water, added the chopped veg, plus salt and pepper and some herbs and things, covered the whole mess, and stuck it into a slow oven. That's it? Lady Thornton asked. It takes a couple of hours to cook, I said, so we should put some potatoes in too, and maybe some apples. In wartime, you were never supposed to use your oven to cook only one dish. It wasted fuel. We found other things that could be baked and put them in the oven. What next? Lady Thornton asked. I've got to go help Fred. I couldn't imagine Lady Thornton on the business end of a pitchfork. On either end, actually. Apparently, neither could she. I want to finish some paperwork for the WVS, she said. We can just leave all this to cook? I nodded. That's not so hard, she said with a wide smile. I knew she didn't really feel cheerful. I knew she was pretending. I liked her better for being willing to pretend. As I pulled on my coat, Ruth came in from outside. Where are you going? She asked. Stables, to do chores. Can I come? I looked at Lady Thornton. She pursed her lips. I shook my head, no. Beef shins are just about the least expensive kind of beef you can buy. But if you cook them right, they taste lovely. By the time I got home from the chores, the whole house smelled savory and good. I took the leftover oatmeal from breakfast, formed it into lumps, and dropped them into the stew's gravy. Just as I hoped, they swelled and turned into something like dumplings. As I was finishing, Lady Thornton walked in. Why didn't you let me know you'd come back? She asked. I would have done that with you. I hadn't even thought about it. I wasn't used to Lady Thornton helping in the kitchen. She said, almost apologetically, it wasn't ever part of my training to learn to cook, you know. When I was growing up, before the First War, girls of my class were expected to assume we would hire a cook. I didn't reply. Was I supposed to feel sorry for her? She wouldn't have hired me to be her kitchen maid before the war. Not me or any girl like me, who grew up poor in the London slums. I started to take the potatoes out of the oven one by one, using a towel to protect my hands. Lady Thornton said, I suppose where you grew up, you often ate beef shin. I said, we could never afford beef shin. We were lucky to get bacon once a week. Lady Thornton said sharply, I wasn't joking, Ada. I straightened and looked her in the eye. Neither was I. She looked as uncomfortable as I'd ever seen her. After a long pause, she said, was that true about your neighbors, too? I shrugged. Maybe. Probably. Most of them had fathers that worked, but most had more mouths to feed. Jamie wasn't any skinnier than the rest of the kids his age. Dirtier, maybe, but not skinnier. I sliced the potatoes open and arranged them on plates. Lady Thornton spooned beef shin stew over the steaming potatoes. What about you? She asked. Were you worse off than Jamie? Even now, thinking about it made me want to send my mind far away. I stayed in one room, I said. I never left it. Lady Thornton paused, her spoon dripping stew. Susan told me that once, she said. I didn't believe her. Susan always believed me about Ma'am. I never thought a mother could be like that, Lady Thornton said. Cold, yes. I've known unaffectionate mothers. My own was quite remote, but not evil. What you describe is evil. I said, Susan said she was incapacitated. Lady Thornton nodded. Very much so. That night, while we ate beef shin, Lady Thornton asked Ruth quite civilly how her studies were progressing. Ruth swallowed and returned a civil answer. Later, as we were washing up, I overheard Susan thank Lady Thornton for the meal. Don't thank me, Lady Thornton said. I'm beginning to learn how much I never realized I didn't know. That's the end of chapter 27.